This is the 18th season of Bass Talk Live. With your host, Matt Pankrat. BTL is brought to you by Lowrance, Bass Cat Boats, AFCO, Strike King Lures, Sunline, Big Bite Baits, Spro, X-Zone Lures, Gamakatsu, The Bass Tank, Denali Rods, and Pro Guide Batteries.
PTL, coming at you!
Good morning and welcome to another exciting edition of Bass Talk Live, where we're going to talk about bass fishing. It's a recorded week. I have to do that a little bit in April because, as I've been talking about recently, it's on a week, off a week, on a week, off a week. And you have to give the opens 100% because there's no point in going there if you're only giving it 50%, worrying about other stuff. And then you can't do 50% on the BTLs because that's the main gig. So I'm just going all out for a month and a half, and then I'll sleep when it's over. Got a really good guest today, though. He's probably 5 to 10 years overdue for a BTL appearance. I didn't really know that he hadn't been on BTL, and I don't know if I could have seen him and Jeffries going at it, maybe. I could have seen Jeffries and our guest today maybe butting heads, having a little bit of friction. I'll tell my first story with our guest today. I mean, he threw a little intimidation my way for the first couple years, but you know, it's Todd Castledine. There he is right there. What's up, Todd?
What's going on?
How are you?
Oh, pretty good.
Do you think that you and Jeffries would have gotten along, or are you guys both like super type A personalities? Do you think you maybe could have seen that going in a very interesting podcast direction had you gotten on when he said he was going to have you on to talk about team tournament bass fishing?
Man, what's crazy is for me to hear some of that stuff, because the problem with me is you're kind of guilty by association, right? So you're guilty by the association of Holman and me being friends with Holman. So I look at you as instantly, oh, you're good with Holman, you're good with me. So I probably treat you a lot closer, even though I might have hardly ever even have known you that much. You know what I'm saying? So same thing with probably Jeffries. I assume he's in y'all's clique, so I'm going to treat him like he's in my clique as well. So I'm just going to probably go right in there at him. But I do it all kind of for fun. Like I don't take too much of this too seriously, to be honest with you. Y'all do. Sometimes y'all do. I actually kind of just have fun with it.
I would have to disagree with you there, Todd. So let's run through my first interactions with Todd Castledine. First one, we're in a marina. I want to say we're in Fort Gibson. No, that would have been the second one. The first one would have been BFL Regional. BFL Regional Lake Texoma 2013. I remember these things, Todd, because I was okay. So we made that Jim Tutt made the cut there. Jeff Reynolds won it. It was super tough. It was in the fall.
Oh, yeah. So and then Justin from Oklahoma.
Justin Phillips had like 19 pounds out of the marina and then barely hung on to make it.
Yeah. Because me and Justin became friends kind of after that when we went to when we made the All-American together. Yeah, we kind of all hung out. That's kind of how I really got to know Jeff Reynolds as well. Him and his wife, me and my wife, when we were all at the All-American, kind of that little group all kind of hung around each other.
Yeah. So I remember that year because at the meeting, I remember you had done an interview or something where you said, I wanted to see what it was like to fish the All-American, so I decided to fish the BFLs. And then you won the points in the Cowboy division. You won like 2 tournaments that year, and you made the All-American. Be honest, that's how it went, right?
Yeah. And funny, so here's crazy. I had a tournament the same weekend as that BFL regional. that I already paid deposits for. Can you guess where it is? You should know. Yep.
Ross Barnett.
Ross Barnett. So I was scheduled to go to Ross Barnett. I was at Lake Falcon fishing a Triple T championship. We did pretty good down there. I was like, okay, do I drive to Ross Barnett, pay that $1,000 or, pay that extra $1,000 and I'm going to lose my deposit, or go fish the regional on Texoma? Because I only had a 1 day. I think we only had, for some reason, I was only going to get 1 day of practice because
of horrible weather.
Right. And so I remember driving all night, getting to Texoma. It was pouring down rain. And I made that decision. I made a decision, go to the regional and try that at Texoma and give up. Man, I've never given up a deposit in an open, and I did. And that was the one. And maybe I win the open, but come on. Let's be realistic. We know how hard that is, but I think I chose the right decision going to Texoma.
Right. So here's what I remember that I had two interactions with you, one of which was after day 2, and I was in the top 10, and I'm like, oh my God, it's Jim Tutt, and he's all Rice Krispied out, and it's you, and I knew you were the biggest thing to have never gone pro at the time, but you had that little aura about you of he puts his boat in the water in Texas, he wins. And then obviously Jeff Reynolds. I knew Justin Phillips because he crushes them at Eufaula.
Yep.
I mean, it was a really stout top 12 there, and I was in my little ZX 190, and I'd gotten 5 bites each of the first 2 days. I put 5 in the boat. I literally on day 2 had 4 for 9, and I'm idling out of a marina, and I remember a crappie guy dropping vertical in between these 2 points, and I said, I got time for 1 cast, and I pull a crankbait out, and I cast over this brush pile. I catch a 5-pounder on the last cast, the last cast.
Wow.
And I hug my co-angler, who was this old burly dude from Arkansas, and when I hug him, he says, son, I just want to remind you that it is totally legal to open carry in Texas. Anyway, so I make the cut, and you are having a clandestine meeting with Jim Tutt behind a dumpster about how there's a buzzbait bite going on. And I'd been trying to figure out how to catch him in the morning. I hadn't caught him. I remember you said something, you said buzzbait, and I walked past, and I think you knew that I heard you say it, and you gave me the side eyes. And I didn't say anything, and I put my head down. But because you said buzzbait to Jim Tutt behind a dumpster, I tied on a black buzzbait, and I caught 2 in the first 5 minutes on the final day.
I never caught a single fish on a buzzbait. I don't remember. So even back then, though, there were that tournament was really, really special for me for one reason, is I had a really decent practice, but I know Texoma in a bad way, in the sense of I know how everyone that's you fish Texoma quite a bit, right? Or have
fair amount, yeah. I mean, I'm not a local there, but yeah, I know my way around Texoma.
Texoma's the best practice lake, in my opinion, almost in the country. If you get the right day, say back then, you get a semi-cloudy, rainy day, and there's a stick in the water, and I'm talking about a twig in the water. There's a fish on it. And you can go have some of the best practice days, because everything, if you just go down the bank that should have a fish, has a fish on it. And it will lure you in. And it did for me for years. And I had a really good practice for the only little day and a half I practiced. But what was crazy is throughout that event, some things happened to me. I think on day 1, I didn't have a fish at 10 o'clock. And I pulled up to this place, and I'd always heard the smallmouth deal. And it was, for me, the smallmouth deal was don't rely on them. Don't depend on them. They'll leave you. And for the most part, it's all true. It's all true. But I really didn't know how to fish for them. You would catch them, but not because I intentionally meant to.
I'm the same way at Texoma. I would agree with you. It's a lot easier to go at the largemouth and holy cow, bonus smallmouth.
100%. Well, I don't do that anymore. But because of this event changed everything for me. And I figured out how to catch a couple. I'll never forget. I'm on this place and these. I caught a largemouth or something, and this fish rolls past. These fish blew up, and it's by some stripers, like where some stripers are at. Like the stripers are busting behind me, and my co-angler's like throwing out there on them.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, these fish blow up in front of me, and I'm going, and they move so fast, like they blew up, and before I could even reel in, they're 30 yards down the bank, and I fired. By that time, I fired where they like as far off. I mean, they were moving so fast, and I catch this giant smallmouth, and I ended up catching 2 there. And on day 2, when I rolled up there, I told my co-angler that I'll never forget this. So there's some things about this tournament I remember. These are them.
Okay.
I roll up to this spot because I barely caught 5 on day 1.
It was cold and it had been nasty.
Yeah, and I didn't know what I was kind of doing. On day 2, I rolled up there and I told my co-angler, you talk about having some confidence. I would never do this now, but I didn't know what I was about to say. But I was like, hey man, listen, what's about to go down is about to be crazy. Get ready. You will not be ready for this. And I mean, like, I had no clue really. Like, but I was being serious. I really thought it was I was like, you have no clue what's about to happen. When it goes down, you're not ready for it. Just make sure we get the net. It's going to be wild and crazy. And I'm just telling you. And we get there, first cast, freaking 4-pounder, just blowing up, eating. She's jumping 6 foot out of the water and it's going crazy. And we net it. And I'm like, come on. He's like, oh, look. I'm like, who cares about that fish? I'm throwing in the live well, making another cast, another one. And it was insane for like 4 or 5 minutes. And I was like, what do you think about that? He's like, I was not ready for that. I'm like, I know, it's crazy. And so that day was just, it didn't matter where I went. Like I was so dialed in. Mm-hmm. I thought this was how it was always going to be. It was not how it was always going to be. But that's why after day 2, I mean, I thought, man, you talk about people getting dialed in. We were talking about guys like John Sukup dialed in.
Yeah.
I was dialed in and I was ready to rock and roll. And some things happened on day 3. I still caught them, but it was Reynolds. Reynolds gets in the way of you sometimes at Texoma. That's not the first time. He got into the way of me a couple of weeks ago. So he'll get in the way of you winning a tournament. Reynolds will.
Those regionals were like, it was like a boat and a truck and it was like $100,000, like $60,000-$80,000 for that thing too. Like I just remember it was like, here's a boat, and you get the truck, and you get $30,000 cash, and you get to go to the All-American. Like I remember I was standing in line, like I missed it by a pound, and I was like, dang, that's a lot of money for a BFL regional.
Do you know I still know my check? Because I looked over there. My wife came up to that event. Like she doesn't come up and look, she came up and Reynolds. And like I said, me and Reynolds are cool. Like I talk to Reynolds all the time, but I still mess with him about that. But he's like, I think he got a brand new Dodge and a brand new Ranger. And my check for second place was $1,500.
Yeah, I think I got like 500 for 8th.
Yeah, his was 60 or 80,000 for first. Second was 1,500, and I was going, huh? And then I was thinking, was this open the right thing? Like I'm looking at this open deal, but then the All-American, I did really good in the All-American, and
you won 14,000 in that. Had a top 5 in the All-American in 2014.
Right. So it was cool. It was worth it.
So the other thing I remember about that tournament, this was my second interaction with you, was we were in the bag line, and I'd had a co-angler the last day who had caught him on a spinnerbait or something. Basically, it kind of went to where I had a co-angler who caught him on a spinnerbait behind me. I switched to a spinnerbait and I caught one, and he said, "You're welcome." And it like he was a high school senior or college freshman. He's a good kid. I got nothing against him, but at the time, I was in my early 30s. I was not happy about it, and I was telling someone else, and you were behind me in the bag line. You said, "Well, how many did your co have?" Because they like separated us. They did them for the weigh-in first, and I said he had a limit. And you looked at me and you just said, "If your co had a limit and you were fishing docks, you're doing it wrong." And then just went back about your way. But that was the only thing you said, and that like stuck out to me. So like you gave me the side eyes over the buzzbait, and then told me that I was a poor angler. Is the two things I got out of it.
I didn't say a poor angler.
All right. What?
What's crazy about those bag lines is I've had so many weird interactions with people in bag lines, and I don't know how to explain them. because they're always all over the place and they go a lot of different directions. I don't know if like sometimes everyone's real chatty Cathy, and then other times it's just dead silence, right? And so
Yeah.
I know I'll tell you what bothered me in that one. And I didn't say bothered me. So I was doing the math in my head, and me and Justin had talked, right? And so he was still leading the event, and I was, I think, in second, and Reynolds was in third. And I remember going, I remember, this is what was crazy. Now that I remember about the dot deal, I rolled into this place, and it wasn't that good on day 3. Remember, day 3 was pretty tough. It was dead sunny, dead calm.
Yeah.
And I pulled up, and I see, there was only a couple of us fishing, right, the final day too, like 12 of us. So I'm looking around and I see this boat and I go, Justin? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, and it's like 12 or 1 o'clock. And I go, man, you got him? Because I didn't really know where he was fishing. He goes, man, I've got 1 or 2. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, oh man. So I instantly knew even my little pattern had died out, and I'm going to these docks, and I'm sitting here going, I better just start fishing these docks for the rest of the day. Like it's that time of the day. So I started doing it, and I ended up catching my limit doing that. And so when we got in there, I knew that I had beat Justin because Justin had, me and him were talking. We were standing right next to each other. He was like, yeah, man, I only got 2. I didn't know about Reynolds, but me and Reynolds, were like really, really close.
Mm-hmm.
They had messed up on the weights. So they had Reynolds weight wrong for the 2-day total. So
Really?
I had him by like 1 pound and 14 ounces. But then they said they had messed it up somewhere along the way that it was only a 14-ounce lead. And I knew he probably had a little bit more weight than me because I think he only beat me by a couple ounces. But I was going, wait, what? So I was kind of a little bit thrown off by the fact that, I mean, have you ever heard that? I mean, they had that entered in wrong going into day 3.
Yeah, no, I've never heard that.
Right. And so I was trying to figure
Almost
it all
as bad as zeroing weights before the final day.
Yeah. So I was kind of a little bit like, trying to figure out weights because I was like, this is going to come down to less than 1 pound, and it did. But yet they had his weight wrong from day 2, but hadn't changed. It was weird deal.
Crazy how that's 10 years ago, and you probably hadn't thought of that in 8 to 10 years anyway, that tournament. Think of all the other events that have happened, all the life events. Like, did you even have kids back then?
How long? That was 2004.
13. 13.
Yes, I had 1.
Yeah, but I mean, think about how crazy it is. And then, like, your memory jogs, and it's like you go right back to that tournament. You can remember all the little things about it's nuts. I remember, like, it's weird how are you the same way with tournaments? Like, you can,
yes.
The more you think about it, like, you start remembering little details about it.
So I don't call myself a very smart guy. I have a decent memory.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I get asked all the time by guys that like don't fish. I was talking to a guy like last week. I play volleyball a lot, sand volleyball a lot. And the guy was asking me, the guy that knows nothing about fishing. I mean, nothing. Doesn't even know what a bass is. But he'll ask you like, "Hey, what's this tournament thing like?" And he'll ask me all these questions, basic stuff. And he'll ask me about fishing, and I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know." He asks, "So do you like put down weight like points or do you write down stuff to remember?" I'm like, "No, not really." He goes, "Well, why not?" I go, "Well, look, I don't know what it is. Like I said, I'm not some guy that remembers everything, but I can pretty much still from that event, I could probably tell you in order of the fish I caught of that event, like in order of every day. Like almost every event that's happened this year. So I've maybe fished 15, 16 events. I can pretty much tell you in order every single fish I've caught, like where, how, and in order. Like throughout. So yeah, I don't know what it is about that. I can remember stuff like that pretty easy.
All right.
I don't remember like telling you that you were doing it wrong on the boat docks though. I was.
I mean, it was like 2 seconds. You said, "Oh, your co had a limit. You're doing it wrong."
I was joking.
Okay, so then the next one would have been. This is the next interaction that I had with you. It's a 2 interaction part 2. One at the meeting, one during practice. Both of them did not go well for me.
You made the top 12.
No, I didn't. In that one I did. I meant but I missed the All-American, which was the goal.
Oh,
So the next
okay.
one was 2015 Opens. It's on Fort Gibson Lake in Oklahoma. Fort Gibson is the lake that is way too small to ever have opens on it, and they love having opens on it. And then they're like, hey, let's put it at the crappiest time of the year, too.
And it's a horrible way.
Okay, so, see, the scene is set. So we're in practice. You're halfway up the river. You're in the marina that has the fountain in it. It's got the 2 little rock jetties in it. You can either go in the front half or the back half. As you're going up the river on Gibson, it's on the left hand side. Yep,
oh yeah,
yep,
okay. Yes.
So it's practice, and I'm idling in there, and I remember the last time that you said what a horrible fisherman I was because I let co-anglers catch him behind me. So you are going down. This is how vividly I remember this. You're going down the left-hand side right before you get to the 2 little rock points.
Yeah.
And I'm practicing with my buddy. I said, that's Todd Castledine, man. I said, that's Todd Castledine right there. Texas legend, Todd Castledine. He's like, who? I said, that's like Todd Castledine. If he ever decided to go pro, it'd be game over for everyone, man. And you're skipping a white swim jig around these docks.
I know. I remember all this.
You do?
Oh, because I know what happened. I know what happened before I talked to you.
I don't, because I came in.
But
I thought, when I knew you were friends with Brad, so I was like, here's my chance. And I said, it's my lucky day. Not too often you get to see Todd Castledine skipping a white swim jig around docks. And you turned around and said, who are you?
I did not say
that is 100% what happened. And I didn't say anything, and I put my head down and continued to idle out.
That is not true.
That is 100% true what happened.
I might have said, who is that?
You said, who are you? And you didn't. And here's how I know you didn't want to talk to me.
Who is that? Because I didn't know who it was.
You were facing, the docks that you were skipping, and I'm a communications major, so I read body language. You did not open yourself up. You gave me the side eye again.
Yeah, 100%.
You said, who are you? And just kept skipping. But it was kind of like a condoning, who are you?
No, I meant who are, so I remember what happened on that one. We had gone in there right before that dock, right? So I had fished the docks. I had fished the rocks right in there, right?
Okay.
But not all of them. I had just fished the point of it. And as you go in there, I had top water with no hooks on. I just threw a top water down that thing, and freaking a 5 or 6 pounder eats it.
Yeah.
And I shake it off. And I'm like, it's Fort Gibson, right? I mean, I'm sitting here going, okay. And so then I put that up and start throwing the swim jig. And I had 2 bites going down them docks. And so I'm in this kind of
you're like, this could be something zone.
Well, yeah, but you get in this weird feeling of does anyone see me? Right. I put blinders on, and I'm just trying to be just put your head down.
Trying to disappear.
1,000%. And so you drive by, and I'm just I don't even look at you, right? Because I don't. Because I'm just not even going to turn around because they won't know. They won't know it's me. I'm just kind of, and you said, I'm like, hey, who is that? I remember doing that because I was going, I didn't really want to turn around at you. And then I kept going. So then I get through there. I might have had I had a flipping bite on this piece of wood that was, I was like, oh, no one's going to find this because it was this weird deal. And then on the way out on the rocks, those rocks peter out into that, if you go out to the rock, I fished on the left, it's horrible. And I don't know why I went back to those rocks on the right as it peters out into that just sand. And I have a 4 pounder eat. And I'm sitting here going, of course, I never get a bite in that stupid thing in the tournament. But
right.
I remember that because it was you'll go forever on Fort Gibson, and it's horrible. And I'd finally gotten some bites, and I wanted to disappear in that little deal. And then like I said, I didn't know who it was. I never turned around because everyone always man, you didn't look at me on the water. And I'm like, dude, I try to I don't. I'm bad about I don't wave at people. I don't see people. Holman's the same way. We don't ever see each we don't ever talk. We don't ever.
Yeah, Holman's either a chatty Cathy or a silent assassin on the water. And if he's a silent assassin, he's fixing to drop the hammer on him.
Same with like I said. I didn't want to be seen.
Okay, that's excusable. That's understandable.
Because I remember that vividly. But I didn't say who. I meant I didn't want to turn around, and I was like, "Hey, who?" I didn't want to All
right, you get the pass on that one, Todd. I'll give you the pass on that one. So the next one then was at the meeting, and I I like sat down. I went there by myself and I sat down and you were sitting in front of me and I didn't realize it. And then I said, "Oh, hey Todd, how's it going?" And you just got up and walked off. That 100% happened. Ask Brad. I've told that story to Brad 10 times.
I've never heard any of these stories.
I'm like, Castledine hates me. Here's 4 examples.
4 examples. Golly.
You just, I was pretty sure that you heard me, and I just decided you didn't want to be sitting in front of me.
You've been around me enough to know that I don't actually, that I don't do that. I pretty much talk to everyone that I know. Now, I don't know everyone, but I mean, I don't remember that at all. I do remember the meeting. Was it on the? Were we on the right hand side of that? Like, why do I remember that? We were on the right hand side because they had folding chairs, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That was it.
Side. I actually remember that. I don't know how. I remember you sitting there. I don't remember you talking to me though.
Yeah, I said, "Hey, what's up?" And then you just got up and walked away.
Never
even responded. I said, "Dang it, that guy's upset that I talked to him on the water. I knew I shouldn't have said anything on the water." All right.
I get some. So it was funny. This is a weird one that I don't think people. This is the weirdest thing, and this is what I was talking about, the bag line thing. So we're at Texoma, and it's me and Hallman. God, is that the one Hallman won? Didn't Hallman win a Texoma event or come in second? No, he came in second.
He came in second. He won on Grand.
He won on Grand. I was in that one too. I remember that one vividly. But
he went on like a heater, didn't he? When Texoma was one of them, he was leading after one day or something.
No. I think Hanselman won it. I think he was in second. Me and Russell and him. And anyways, long story short. So all I remember is we had this house in this one pocket, and then, I say in this pocket, right? And then up the street, they wouldn't let us park our vehicles there. So we had to park like 3 lots down on this open lot. So we would all park there and we were all getting ready. And he used to travel, which is weird because like I travel mainly with guys from Oklahoma and Louisiana. I don't really travel with guys from Texas. And he was traveling with a co-angler from Texas. And he made, this is back way before YouTube, obviously, or any of that stuff. And he goes, "Hey man," he goes, he was asking him, this co-angler was asking about me, or something got brought up because I just got off the phone with him. Home, and I said, "Hey, you need anything? I'm coming by, like we always do, right? And we need anything from the store or whatever." And he goes, "So what's up with that Castledine guy?" Holman's like, "What do you mean?" Holman's off. He's not really paying attention to what the guy's asking. He's just like, "I don't know. What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, he doesn't talk a lot or something." And Holman goes, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, man, like he didn't like, I see him in these bag lines and he doesn't say nothing to anyone. He's just sitting there." And he goes, and Holman, he's like, it clicked for Holman. Holman's like, "What?" You know how Holman's like, "What?" He's like, "Guy will never shut up." And he's like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Watch when he gets here. He's going to pull in, rant about something, talk our ears off for 30 minutes, not get any of his stuff done, and then walk down to the house." And so I get there, and of course, I don't know, I'd go off about something, and they never even speak, right? I just talk for whatever, and then go off to the house. And he looked at Holman, tells the story. He looks at him, he goes, "Well, what? I don't get it." He goes, "Look, man, that guy he's in a bag line." He goes, "What's funny is he goes, y'all kind of all know him, but he doesn't necessarily might not know you or whatever." He goes, "So he just kind of minds his own business. He just kind of stays quiet. He stays off to the back." And he goes, "But he gets a bad rap because guys are like, man, he didn't say nothing." But he goes, "When you were in that bag line, did you say something to him?" He goes, "Well, no." He goes, "Well, that's..." So he's not just going to just randomly talk to everyone there as well. But, so Holman's like, he's one of those guys, man, if you know him, he'll talk your ear off. If not, he just kind of stays to himself in the background. And that's kind of how it is.
Yeah, that was the 2015 Southwestern Division. Hallman finished second on that.
Yeah.
If you remember, that was the year of Hanselmania. He won all three in the Southwestern, and then he also won the championship division. Is that the most impressive thing you've ever seen in bass fishing, Todd?
For sure. Like for sure. I don't. It. Yes. I mean, I'm trying to think of anything that even comes close, and we've all said it, because it's not the. Surprisingly, it's not the fact that he won 3 in a row. That's not it. It's the championship thing. It's going to the champ. I mean, the 3 in a row is like incredible, right? That's something that wouldn't. If it was just the 3 in a row, it would be the most. It's almost looked down upon because he went and won the championship like it was easy. It's just unheard of. It's just incredible. No one. It's the one thing that will never be done again, ever, ever.
Because the championship that year, I believe, was on the Ohio River.
Ohio River, yes.
And then the tournaments were on Texoma, Rayburn, and Amistad.
Oh yeah, I know them all. I fished. I mean, the Amistad one was pretty cool, because that was the one where he had the video where he ran up the river.
That little creek that like was supposed to be lake and wasn't, and it was just like as wide.
It's the actual river. I talked to him about that a little bit, and it was really weird too, because then he flipped him up on Rayburn, and I always tell me and Holman always talk about it's the fact that Holman's a flipper, right? And he comes down to Rayburn all the time, and the water's up in the bushes, and I'm just going, Holman, dude, stop flipping. You're never going to win a tournament flipping down here. And he's always like, Todd,
I don't care. I'm flipping. If it's in the bushes, I'm flipping the bushes.
Oh, and every year, he's like, well, look at the top 10. 8 of the top 10 are flippers. They're flipping. And I'm like, Holman, 160 of the 190 guys are flipping. Of course, 80% of them are flippers. But the 2 guys who are going to win this thing are not going to be – there's 10 guys Carolina rigging, and 2 of them made the top 10, and one of those guys is going to win it. And sure enough, that usually happens. But that year, he won it. He won it flipping. And it was just crazy because we were flipping all around him. And it's like he just caught 5-pounders everywhere he went. And all of us flipping or catching 2.5 and 3-pounders. And it just didn't matter. It didn't. And then he goes up to Texoma and frogs them up because the water was up and it created this like hay stuff in the water. It was just.
It's a magical. Like I said, you've won 2, 3, 4, 5 tournaments in a row, but they're primarily on like 1 or 2 fisheries, right? Like you get on a roll on Rayburn, or you get on a roll in those area lakes, and it's impressive to you as an angler that he did it across 3 different bodies of water, including his home water, a unique pattern, a pattern that shouldn't have worked, and then went to the Ohio River with all that pressure after having won it and won the championship. We'll never see anything like that again, and you got to witness it.
No, I did, and he caught him. I didn't go to the championship, because
you made it though.
Yeah, no, I didn't. If you look up, I didn't go to it. It's the one championship I didn't go to. I was so mad at him for putting it on that river, and I had other.
Really?
I'm serious. I was so mad.
I didn't go out of spite.
I went out of yes, I didn't go out of spite. I was so mad they put it on there, and I had talked enough. When I say talked enough to be like, I hate when we go to rivers or these places that are I got mad a little bit at them for a while, putting it on these plates. We would have these phenomenal lakes. Toyotas are really good, right? If you look across the country, EverStarts, Costas, Toyotas, whatever they're called. If you look across the country, we go to the best lakes in the country, right? They go to Harris Chain. When they're in Alabama, they go to Gunnersville's. They go to the Kentucky Lakes, Grand Lakes, Table Rocks, Rayburns, Toledo's. Like, they set it up. And then they pick a championship. We have had a championship on the Ouachita River. I mean, it was like they had 3 bad championships where I don't mind tough fishing. We just hate where you go like, hey, look, we have 5,000 lakes to pick from. You're going to pick the, 4,999th worst one. And that's what they had done. And I was like, this place is going to be horrible too. We're going to spend a bunch of money. It's going to be a river deal. It's going to be I just knew how it was going to play out. And I was kind of right. It played out exactly like I thought it would. And I didn't really like the Alabama rig at the time and still don't. But yeah, he caught them all Alabama rigging and like up by the tail race. I don't know. I just didn't want to play that game. I think I had another tournament, so I just went to it.
Fair enough. We're talking with Todd Castledine. What are you now? Are you a professional angler still? But you're like, what do you like? If someone says like, give yourself a title, what would your title be, Todd?
I've never called myself a professional angler. I don't know.
That's how you make your money, though, isn't it?
I always tell people I fish for a living. Look at that stump.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to how to put that professional fishing for a living guy, Todd Castledine. Because you've done the tour thing, but you're a full-time pro. You do bait design.
Yeah. So I mean, like I said, around the country, there was always this way of this is what you do, right? You go and you try to make this touring thing to make a living. And I was sitting back home, and we had such great tournaments back home, and I just didn't. One, when I qualified for the elites and all that stuff, and I've qualified for the tour quite a bit, and I qualified last year. I just doesn't make sense to me at time. Like, if you got someone paying your way, by all means, go do it. But if not, if you're going to foot a lot of that bill, it's very, very difficult to make money.
But Brad used to be a plumber, or used to do that. You don't do that. Like this is what you full time.
No,
fishing, lure, design, that type of stuff.
Well, yeah, that only happened the last couple of years. But I mean, when I was like 22, I was going to college, and going to college at SFA and fishing back home and just fishing tournaments. And when I got 21, 22, like I was working a college job for a long time. And then what would happen was I would fish so much, and then I would take a semester off and fish in the springtime, usually when it was, and I'd make a lot of money. And then I would go to school in the fall and then take the next semester off and fish. And then one year I had a little bit better semester fishing, like pretty good, to where I'm like, hey, maybe I don't go to school next year, the next fall. And that fall led into the next, and the next thing I know, I never went back to school. And so I'm 12 hours short of my college degree, and never went and got it. And I just kept fishing tournaments, and that was how I made a living. So yeah, I just looked at tournaments differently than most, and I still do. So I have a very big passion when it comes to that. So I'm very opinionated on tournaments, like how it should be set up, because man, I fished them all. So I know what good tournaments are and bad tournaments are, and how you can make money. And, a lot, like we've talked about it all, about opens and all these different things. And that's why I said, if your dreams want to go fish the elites or fish these things, you better have a pretty good plan in place, because it's very hard to make a living doing that before you get there. And so I was always going to make sure, and I talk about this a lot, right? Openly with everyone. I'm like, hey, look, everyone likes to talk about the success stories of everyone. No one talks about all these anglers that we know that are phenomenal fishermen. Like, I mean, way better fishermen than me. And they don't, and they get lost around the way somewhere, right? Like life happens to them, and they have a bad year or two, and then all of a sudden
they're
you
gone.
don't hear about them fishing anymore. And those guys don't get talked about, but they're real. And I always tell people, I'm like, hey man, just as many success stories as there are, there's ones that they didn't do anything wrong. They still caught them, but just because you catch them doesn't mean you're going to make money. And that's the reality of it.
I had a buddy who, you always have those buddies. I'm selling all my crap.
Mm-hmm.
I'm done. I had a buddy who actually did it, and I bought like half of his crap. And then my other buddy bought the other half.
Oh yeah.
And now he's got like a Boston whaler, and he fishes for blue cats and crappie and loves it. But anyway, all right, we're going to take a break. Come back with Todd Castledine. I do want to talk about, if you were like the czar of the world and you could create the best tournament platform, what you think that would be. I'll give you a couple minutes to think about that. I also want to think. I'm going to throw this statement out there right now before the break. And I've watched a lot of your videos, and I know how you fish a lot. I think you might be one of the top 5 bank beaters going. Is that a bad term? Do you hate being called that? But I watch a lot of videos. I think you fish the bank better than 99.99% of guys out there, which is not kind of an in vogue thing to do. Now it's time to go out, look at your 16-inch graph and chase them around, and you're up there on the bank. So we'll get your thoughts on that. Also, if you were the czar of tournament fishing and anything you wanted in a tournament could happen, what are some elements you would have in it? It is BTL. We'll be back after this.
Bigger and better. The Lowrance Ultimate Fishing System upgrade now offers more. A new $200 rebate on active target live sonar and bigger savings with up to $1,200 cash back. Pick fish finding tools to fit the way you fish. From high-performance sonar and ultra-quiet ghost trolling motor to navigation and networking tools that bring it all together. Find more, see more, catch more.
The new Puma STS has been redesigned from the ground up. With the angler, design, function, and performance in mind, nothing on this new offering was compromised, and the only thing carried over from the previous version is the name. Based on the Soft Touch series hull that started with the flagship Jaguar, this new model is nimble and performs incredibly well at all speeds with either a 250 or 300 horsepower engine. Featuring a new 96-inch wide-body footprint, this hull measures out at 20 foot 7 inches in length. Industry-leading design coupled with tournament-winning performance. The Puma STS from Basscat. Feel the rush.
I've made my living on the water for over 20 years.
For 14 years.
For over 23 years.
I've worn a bunch of different clothing brands over the years.
Some companies big.
And some companies small.
All of them said they were making clothing for us.
But none of them knew us.
None of them were us. Except for one.
Except for one.
Except one.
AFCO.
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 Fishing isn't part of us. It is us.
The KVD 100 jerkbait. 15 different colors. A perfect combination of roll, wiggle, and flash. Increased castability. 3D eyes. Premium black nickel hooks. KVD. Tie one on. Striking lures.
Are you looking to install your own fishing electronics? Well, the Bass Tank is here to help you. The solution is the Bass Tank Power Harness. It takes the guesswork out of installation. No more voltage issues or interference. Designed by an engineer so that you can get professional results right there in your own garage. Installation done right with the help of the Bass Tank Power Harness. You can feel confident knowing that your installation was done right. The Bass Tank Power Harness. Give us a call or order yours today at thebasstank.com.
Elite Series Pro Daryl Gleason here. My Pro Guide batteries keep me going on those long tournament days and long practice days. Always plenty of juice, never fail. The best part about Pro Guide batteries, it's the people behind the company. They have over 40 years experience in the battery business, keeping all of us fishermen out on the water longer, catching more fish. Check them out at ProGuideBatteries.com.
What's up, Bass Talk Live fans? Brandon Polnick here. And ever since I won a couple Bassmaster Elite Series events on X-Zone Lures, I've been getting a bunch of questions of what makes them so special and different. And really, the truth is, it's in the details. The little details, things like no cheap fillers in their plastic. That gives you more lifelike action, more realistic and vibrant colors. But don't just take my word for it. Go to www.xzonelures.com and check them out for yourself.
Welcome back to BTL, talking with Todd Castledine about a number of things. We started out the first segment, spent a solid 20 minutes on 4 examples of why Todd hates me. And we moved on to some tournaments in the mid-2000s. And now we'll move on to a little bit of tournament scenarios. Like you said, you're outspoken. You talk a lot on your YouTube channel. You have like your, what were they calling them? Like the late night chat or the bass anger therapy. Bass anger therapy. You guys go through a bunch of rants and stories, and you know, it's kind of like hanging out with the guys. It's really cool. I don't know. Are you planning on doing that again this year at any of the events that you're fishing?
Hopefully with you, hopefully with y'all here in a little bit. So yeah, I plan on it.
All right. Hopefully, like I said, this is recorded. So while this is going on, we should be down at Mississippi and Ross Barnett, which hopefully we find a house to stay at. Hopefully we're at a house is what I'm saying, because I think we have one yet right now, unless
I'm gonna leave that alone.
we've mentioned that a number. Unless you do, unless I'm the odd man out in this one, in which case I'll already know at this point.
No, I have it with one other guy. Like he found a little bitty too little deal. Like
Yeah.
I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, there's like 4 or 6 of us that are doing it.
Right.
But yeah, I love to do that and hope I do it. But like you said, you have fished a lot of tournaments. You have won over $1 million. Now, some of that is on the national level. You did fish the FLW Pro Circuit, now the Tackle Warehouse Pro Circuit with MLF for a couple of years. Notched around $100,000 in that, but a lot of it is at the state and regional level. The Toyota Series, Bassmaster Opens, team tournaments, big solo tournaments around the East Texas, Louisiana area. So you've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly from all levels of tournament organization and competition. Dial up the ideal tournament. Let's just say for the average BTL listener, a guy who fishes a Triple T, Nichols on Grand, one of those BFL anglers, between that $300 and $650 entry fee deal. Like, what is the ideal tournament in Todd Castledine's world?
Look, so it all, so such a tough one. Look, this is what we kind of laugh about tournaments. Good tournament run organizations not necessarily are great. They're just better than all the bad ones. How about that comment?
Okay.
They're not great. They're just better than the bad ones. And so people get accustomed to seeing things. They're like, oh, it'd be like having gas prices at $4 and then they go down to $3 and everyone cheer. And we're like, maybe that's really not all that good, right? It's just better than $4.
Right.
When we'd all like to pay back, when I was going to college, I think it was 87 cents. So you look at what's going on now. We used to go fish tournaments when I was 20, 18, 19, 17 years old, whatever. We're talking 20 something years ago. And sometimes the prize was just as good back then as it is now. But everything else has gone up. Everything. Right? And so, they used to give away boats and all kinds of stuff. And I know why they don't give away as many boats now, because a lot of people don't want boats or whatever. But they used to give away boats in a lot of these tournaments. Now it's $20,000. Well, a brand new boat's way better than $20,000. So, and if I bring up the $20,000, because that's kind of where.
That's solid in Oklahoma. There's a lot of $20,000 tournaments.
Correct. So, and I will say this about Oklahoma tournaments, from what I understand, and I don't want to be wrong on this. Tell me if I'm right. A lot of Oklahoma tournaments, the directors aren't out there trying to make a living doing tournaments, correct? Or is that?
Yeah, like Nichols, Nichols, Skeeter. Yeah, they all, there's some, but there's also a lot of them are associated with like a dealer or a different organization, and then the tournament's part of that.
Which is fine. And so you kind of look at it as those are usually the better ones. The TXTTs, when they started, and that's why I said, and this isn't a knock on anything. I'm just, if I always looked at it, what's the best bang for your buck? And then you get into all like what I would call, would I say fairness, or is the tournament run right? When I say fairness, we all just want the same rules applied to everyone. We just want the tournament run smoothly. Nothing crazy. Like I'm the least guy that worries about any of that stuff. But a tournament that is run sometimes, like you said, by maybe a dealer, or the TXTTs had like Cabela's and then had all these incentives. And so they would do all these things, and then you would have these incentives on top of incentives. And so the TXTTs, they used to give away Ranger money, Triton money, Nitro, Mercury, Evinrude. I think they still give away Garmin, PowerPole, all this stuff. So you look up, and I remember when me and Russell were fishing those for a while, back when he had a Ranger and an Evinrude, we only had to come in like sometimes 70 or 80th place to get $250 from Ranger and $250 for Evinrude. That's $500. Our entry fees were paid for and some, and we didn't actually get a check in the tournament, or you didn't even have to place in where they start paying money out. So those were good tournaments. Now that is not the case anymore. They obviously they don't give away Ranger money anymore, and the incentives have gone down. But when you look at some of those tournaments that are giving away huge incentives, and most of those tournaments, if you look at it, they're not keeping the money. There's not a percentage of payback in the sense of they're not worried about the percentage of payback because they're going to pay back based on a certain amount anyways, where other tournament directors, it's like 78% payback or something.
They're looking at it as a marketing tool for Nichols Marine or for Skeeter, as
Correct.
opposed to taking a rake. It'd be like make a rake off of the entry fee, like a poker table or blackjack table, depending on what the rake is.
Exactly. Which is like, I'm not going to fault him for that. Like I love incentives. I made a living for a couple of years off Legend incentive. Like that was
like $5,000 a pop or something like that.
It got up to 10.
$10,000 a pop, no max.
Yeah, no max at the time. No.
My goodness. So you'd win like $2,000 in the tournament and $10,000 in Legend.
So I'll give you an example real quick. I fished a BFL super team. I'll never forget this. This is where I met Scott Martin 2 days later in a lock on the Muskogee River. We tied up next to each other on that lock. And I had gotten down there and I had only had 1 day of practice. And so I tied up. I didn't know Scott from whatever. I tied up next to him and he was asking me, we started, we got to wait for about 45 minutes or whatever. So we're sitting at the lock and we're talking. We start talking about Rayburn. And he was asking me about practice. And I said, yeah, man, I just got down here. He's like, oh, really? I'm like, yeah, I just got done with the 2-day BFL super team tournament on Rayburn because it was in the fall. It was a September event. He's like, how'd you do? I was like, man, I did pretty good. I won it. And he was like, well, man, how much did you win? And I was like, well, I'll be honest with you. And I kind of always kept this quiet because incentives are really good if you're the only ones in the incentives, right? So there's certain things I kind of was kept quiet about. So I won like 6,000, 6 or 6,800, I don't know, something like that. Let's just say 6,000 in the super team because it was a super tournament.
The 2-day super.
So it was a $300 entry fee. It was a little bit more payback. So it was like 6,000 or something, and then I made 10,000 from Legend, and then I won. I think 1,000 for my Mercury I had on there, 500 for my trolling motor, and I won way to win money, power pole money, and and Toyota money. So when it was all said and done, I paid a $300 entry fee, fished for 2 days on my home lake, and won 19,000. And Scott looked at me and he was like, "That's more money than second place will get here against." I'm like, "Yeah." And I didn't have to drive all the way up here, fish for 3 days, fish against 200 something people. I got to sleep in my own bed for the most part, But I paid $300 as opposed to $1,600. And so I've always done the math when it came to tournaments, and then figured out every advantage they're going to give you. When I say advantage, if they're going to figure out a way to give you more money, I'm going to take part of that advantage.
You're wearing the sunglasses, you're using a trolling motor, you're registering the boat, you're wearing the patch, you're putting it on the deal to get the money. You're playing the game.
I look for things like I looked for those things. I mean, you should look for those things when doing anything, in my opinion. I mean, if a company is going to reward you for using in my opinion, that's better than most sponsorships. Like I'm just telling, sponsorships are hard to get money from. I mean,
if you can change your deal to just match the incentives for that tournament organization,
man, it's pretty darn good. Sometimes.
You're golden.
Yeah. So look for those things. So, anyways, that's where I looked at that stuff in these tournaments and how they go and what's actually being offered from them. And the crazy part, you had asked me earlier about where would you like all this. It's great at that level. I'm not a fan of it as it gets bigger. Like as the tournaments, I'm not a fan of having sponsorships or sponsors in charge of tournaments to a degree, because that's where I think you start they start looking past the angler and more at the other stuff. But sometimes at that local, regional level, they are better.
I got you. I did call you a bank beater before our break, and I think that you would even say that you like to fish the bank. You like to fish at stuff you can cast at. Is that something that you've questioned in the last couple years with the advancements of this forward-facing sonar? And then on the second half of that, what makes you so good at casting at stuff that you can see and everyone else can see too? Because you just walked through how you have fed your family on it.
I grew up on Livingston, so that was 100% a bank deal, right? So I thought.
No, what is Lake Livingston like? I've never been to Lake.
Oh, okay.
Livingston.
So Lake Livingston. Well, now it's horrible, but it was always the lake that you don't fish over 4 foot of water. I mean, every tournament's ever won is 4 foot of water or less, muddy, and that's what it was. So I grew up walking the banks on Livingston. Somewhere along the way, though, I'm a guy who to this day hates doing what everyone else is doing. I hate it. I've always hated it. So they had a bunch of boat docks on that lake, and everyone fished. They just fished the same way. And so I made it a point when I was pretty young, after a couple of years of fishing there, that I was going to go figure out how to catch them deep. So we're talking a long time ago, right? And so I spent 2 weeks out there throwing a Carolina rig every day, and I never caught a fish for basically 2 weeks.
Because you were throwing a Carolina rig, Todd.
Yeah, and I finally caught a fish, caught one on it. A week or two later, we had a tournament, and I won the event, and I caught him deep. And I learned that place. I like a light went off on me, and I started figuring out how to catch him deep. And I say deep, not no 20 foot, but anything over 4 foot was deep. And I learned how to catch them in 10, 12, 14 foot over there. And I was able to go fish stuff that no one would ever fish. Now, I get to Rayburn, same deal, fish shallow. Still love to fish shallow. Still think you can win every tournament shallow, almost. Except what happened is same deal. There was a time of the year where everyone fished shallow. I got tired of it. I didn't think it was right. So I went out there deep, figured out the deep deal, and we started blasting some pretty giant bags, some 30-pound bags for a couple of years. What I realized, though, out there deep, and it was all right back then, but back then we kind of kept a low profile. I try to be pretty slick, and it sucks because back then, man, I didn't believe in social media. I didn't believe in any of that stuff, right? I tried to keep, like I said, stay in the back of the room, pull the hoodie up over my head and not be seen. And I didn't want to be seen because I knew that it only took one or two people to kind of see what you're doing.
Hey, I saw Todd Castledine throwing a white swim jig in the marina on Fort Gibson.
Right. And so we were pretty slick about how we did it for a couple of years. Like we just tried to not be caught out there doing what we were doing. And that has slowly changed on Rayburn. I mean, that is not the way anymore on Rayburn. But the problem is the time and effort it took to find and figure that stuff out and find these needle and haystack types of deals. It was great. But then all of a sudden it takes one tournament, right? One guy, maybe a co-angler, maybe whatever it might be, and you lose. Maybe it took you, let's just say 30 hours to find that one spot. And it takes 1 second for you to lose it, and you'll never get it back. And after a while, I thought I was going to lose it in fishing. Like I was like, I cannot handle it anymore. It was, I just didn't like working that hard and then getting it gone. So, not that I went back to my roots of fishing the bank. I just don't care to do it anymore out there as much as I used to. But when I go to these other places, kind of the same thing. Like when we go to these places, everyone wants to use all that technology they have. And I do too. Like I don't talk about it. I mean, I never talked about that I knew how to do side imaging. I don't really talk about live scope. I think I know what a fish looks like on live scope. So don't talk about it. But you can it's hard to learn the bank without going down the bank a lot. You know what I'm saying? Like you can't,
Yeah.
that's not something you can learn in a magazine or learn from people. Like that's something you just got to go do a lot of. And I've just done a lot of it and tried to get really good at it. And I mean, me and Hallman, we have a lot of conversations about it. We talk about looking at land. I mean, it's amazing when me and Hallman talk about the bank stuff, what we notice, I don't think is really what most people notice. And we try to, figure that out. Doesn't always work, but I do enjoy it. I will say it's like it's my comfort zone for sure.
You still have some stuff when it comes to fishing the bank that won't make it on YouTube that you just are going to kind of keep under your hat. That's your bread and butter.
1,000%. Yeah. And it's not, it probably wouldn't matter even if I did. Because like I'm thinking about some of these lakes we go to. I mean, some of it's not even that big of a. It's not. So I'm a big guy that when I talk about like, hey, there's a lot of secrets in bass fishing, and everyone's like, man, there ain't no secrets anymore. Well, I've gotten into some arguments with some guys, like really, really good fishermen, and this is one of my deals. I always tell people, I'm like, hey, look, you might be the best fisherman on Gunnersville, right? And you've got this one bait that really, really works. And maybe there's 30 other guys throwing that bait. They're like, oh, everyone knows about it. But I always tell them, like, yeah, but they don't know you're throwing it. And so if you go out there and win 3 events in a row, it's always better, in my opinion, if you want to keep that hidden, like, don't tell anyone, right? Like, you can keep that hidden because then they start to wonder, I wonder what he's doing. Now, you might be throwing the same bait as them, but if they don't know it, to me, that's a secret. They don't know what you're doing, so they might go hear about 50 other things, trying to do all this other stuff while you're just over here throwing this bait that everyone else is throwing, but they don't know you're throwing it. And so it's kind of one of those deals is I'm not throwing anything special, but I might just be doing something that no one else is doing.
You're just throwing the same bait better than them. You're reading the water better.
I don't even think they're throwing the same bait as me. I just think they just, I'll look around and go flipping. Not going to flip. Right? I'm just not going to
I see what you're saying.
So I'll just, like, oh, chatterbait. Man, I will put a chatterbait rod up in the rod, but I don't care how many y'all are catching on it. I'll put it up going, everyone's going to throw it. I better figure out another way to catch fish, not doing what everyone else is doing. So I pay attention to what other people do. I kind of want to know what they're doing for the opposite reason.
So you can not do it.
We talk about that. Yeah, we talk about that all the time when, I'm horrible with information. Obviously, you know how much research I do on our fantasy deal. So you can just imagine how much research I do when we go to these open lakes. 0. Like, I know nothing when we show up there. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it hurts. But when we go there, I'll find out, like, through y'all, right, or Andrew, or someone will be like, that tournament was won over there in that creek last week. And I'm like, great. And, and they're like, why? I'm like, well, I fished that yesterday. I'm not going back there because I know it'll have twice as much.
Everyone will be back there.
Correct. So I only want to know where people won a tournament, so I don't go there.
You talk about the secrets and things like you threw it. You'd been chucking the hybrid hunter, or a variation of the hybrid hunter, for a long time before you kind of took it to Strike King for development too. Something similar to that. Is that kind of a case of, hey, you're fishing shallow, fishing the same thing, but you're not trapping and you're not square billing. You've got something that's a little bit different.
For years, it's the same bait. I mean, when I was with Strike Pro and had it, right? I mean, it is a long story about the whole deal. But
yeah, no, you don't have to get into it. I was just using that as an example of a bait that your name is kind of attached to, that just kind of illustrates what you just talked about.
Right. And so I just, I didn't want to trap. I didn't want to throw a trap around everyone. And so, and honestly, the swim jig came before that. Like I thought, hey man, everyone says this is a crawfish, right? And I'm like, well, maybe I can just throw a swim jig and make it look like a crawfish and do the same thing. So I kind of was swim jigging kind of before anyone else did, years and years ago. And then this was kind of right there with it. And I've always tried to I was really into baits, man. Like really tried to figure out different baits that no one would throw. I'm just a guy. I have confidence when I'm throwing a bait that might not be better than what you're throwing, but I have confidence because maybe no one's using it.
All right, that makes sense. We're going to take a final break, and when we come back, I want to pick your brain about how to instill confidence. You've mentioned that multiple times. Confidence in our listeners, our viewers, to go out and catch them. Because I had Jason Christie on last week, and there's a bestontour.net stat that he's won like $580,000 this year. Yeah, he's won 300. He just won the last one, and he said, man, they used to say that confidence is 80% of it. I think it might be almost 95% of it. And you're a guy that comes across as very confident. Like, I feel like every time you launch the boat, you're not ever a guy who's like, man, it's gonna suck today. I feel like you're always like, oh, dude, I'm gonna figure out a way to catch him, man. I'm Todd Castledine. Like you have confidence. You have a lot of confidence. You exude confidence on the water. Fair assessment?
Maybe.
Okay, maybe. So when we come back from the break, I want you to think of some ways that maybe you're one of those guys who gets it on the water and you're like, oh, here we go again, another 2-fish Tuesday for me. Maybe a way to turn that around to get a little bit of confidence, a little swag in your step, so the next time you hit the water, you can translate that to more fish on the box. It's BTL. We'll be back after this.
Vibrating jigs are a great choice for any time of year, and the Kamikaze Swim-On is a perfect match for any vibrating jig. 2 sizes and the unique tail design gives it a bait fish profile and a great swimming action for realism. There are 17 colors. See them all at bigbitebaits.com.
The Spro Little John crankbait has been around for almost 15 years, and it is one of my go-to crankbaits whenever I need a fish in the boat, so you can never have enough new colors. That's why Spro's coming out with a handful of new colors, including Pearl Shad, which has this bleached out white look, but it's got this pearlescent, really, really pretty. We've got Copper Shad, which looks amazing in the water. It's got that purple flake on the back, really, really pops in the water. And then if you want some real pop, we've got Sparkle Shad, nothing but sparkles all over this thing. And then last but not least, we've got the matte Sexy Shad, just a really different looking color for a crankbait. So you want to give them a little different look, that matte Sexy Shad is definitely the one to go with. All these colors are available in the original Little John and the MD.
Combining one of the most popular hook styles with Gamakatsu's beefier Superline offering, the Gamakatsu Superline Offset Round Bend delivers the strength necessary to target big fish in heavy cover. Well suited for braided line and heavier fluorocarbon, the Gamakatsu Superline Offset Round Bend is built using stronger Superline wire that allows anglers to easily fish a finesse worm around heavy cover. The round bend offers a larger bite area, perfect for any worm presentation, while increasing your hookup ratios. The newly enhanced Z-bend holds your plastics on the hook longer, reducing the number of pull-offs and reducing damage to plastics. Available in 2/0, 3/0, 4/0, and 5/0, this is the most durable worm hook, designed for heavier lines that hold your bait on longer.
Preparation is key to success. And that preparation starts well before you ever hit the water. You're only as strong as your connection to the fish, and your line is that critical connection. Confidence in your line every minute of every day on the water is a necessity, and failure, it's not an option. Sunline makes the fluorocarbon, nylon, and braided lines to give you the strength to guarantee your confidence.
The new Android series is the peak of the Denali lineup and offers the ultimate Denali experience. The Android series features 36-ton multi-directional graphite combined with interlock blank technology for added strength. Each rod is outfitted with Royal titanium guides that will not fail. The blank is fitted into an easy-touch, soft-feel EVA foam grip with exposed blank reel seat. This all allows the Android to transmit every movement of your bait and even the most subtle bites. The Android series is the finest rod Denali has ever made and offers an angler the ultimate fishing experience with a limited lifetime warranty. See the full lineup of Android rods at denalirods.com.
Welcome back to BTL, wrapping things up with Todd Castledine. I've really enjoyed this, dude. I learned some stuff about you. I appreciate it. I haven't felt that intimidated or anything. Like, you've been a very good guest. You've been very nice and gracious the whole time, giving up some good tips. I'm still going to beat you in fantasy fishing this year. That's my goal.
You might this year.
I had a horrible tournament 2 tournaments ago.
If you keep on, picking Jason Christie, there's a good chance you will. So
Yes, I'm picking him. I told you, I don't lie on that show that we do with Andrew. I pick him. I'm picking him out of spite for the remainder of the season. So, confidence, dude. How much of it do you think has to do with catching fish? Like, to me, it's a weird deal. You can be confident, but you can still stink at bass fishing. It doesn't matter how confident you are. Like, if there's no fish where you're fishing, you mean the most confident person in the world, you can't catch what isn't there.
Wow. So you could have picked this one topic, and I think me and you could have talked about this for 2 hours. And honestly, after 2 hours, someone could have listened to this and not really understood anything we said, and I might not make any sense whatsoever with what I'm about to say. Because I think there's so many, I'll almost go against my own argument on this and go back and forth. But I actually released a video today, and it's this video called Pros versus Joes. And it was kind of like, it wasn't like who the best fisherman is. And I'll ask you, it was more or less, can a regular guy, when I say a regular guy, like professional, right? So a guy like fishing the major tour,
yes.
Are there guys out there better at certain techniques? And you'll get where I'm going with this. Are there guys better at certain techniques than the professionals?
100%.
Okay, so that's what I said too, and there were reasons why I said it. And one of them is so you're essentially have the same schedule as a touring pro right now. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
Okay, so if you like to really do something and you're really good at it, do you get a chance to go do that? Like, say, what's something you really like to do, like fishing wise, technique wise?
I can't tell you because you'll laugh at me.
Well, I won't laugh at you. It doesn't matter.
I like to throw a drop shot.
Okay, so you like to throw a drop shot. How much right now over the past year, 2 years, do you get to throw a drop shot in practice, like fishing around, not on all these lakes, but just how much?
Well, that's why I picked a drop shot 90% of the time. I caught 81% of my fish last year in the opens on a spinning rod, and 47% of them came on a drop shot, and over 60% have come on a drop shot this year.
Right. So you've got to do it a lot.
I've gotten to, but I picked something versatile.
You picked something versatile.
My next favorite thing is to throw a little bitty crankbait.
Okay.
I have gotten to do that like twice in the last 3 years.
Okay, so that's a better example. So if you are really good at that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then another guy lives on a lake or 2 or 3 lakes that gets to throw that little crankbait all the time. Like 70% of the time on that lake, they'll catch them. And little bitty crankbaits come out from different companies, and he's messing around with those. And you look up and go, and you see a guy on tour go, man, that guy's really good. Well, I think there's some guys back home all around this country that are really good at certain techniques. And that brings me to this confidence thing is Jason Christie. What I've learned over him is he's going to do what he does. And most of the really good, John Cox is like the perfect example of this as well, right? There are guys that are doing really well that do what they do regardless. And I think what happens is this confidence thing, when you go to a lake, right? And I think it happens a lot. They'll schedules mean so much. That Ray Hanselman deal, and like I said, I'm gonna be all over the place. So just hear me, like you're gonna have to remember everything we said in this whole video. That Ray Hanselman thing, he was on his home lake. He went to Rayburn and flipped bushes, went to Texoma, threw a frog, like fished heavy cover stuff that Ray Hanselman likes to do, and then went through Alabama rig with braid. He wasn't drop shotting. There's no drop shotting on any of that stuff. He never threw a wacky. He never did any of that stuff. Those 4 lakes played into how he likes to fish, right? So that confidence just kept building over and over and over again. The schedule helps out. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. What I'm saying is scheduling can do that. Like I looked up when I fished the tour and like we didn't hardly get to sight fish very much. We didn't get to frog fish. Like there's certain things that I like to do that it didn't go on. And so I had to learn different techniques and stuff. And sometimes actually some of the best tournaments I did were stuff that I didn't really know that well. But what my point was is you go to these lakes and that confidence starts to build because it plays into your hands. And I think that's where confidence comes from. You're right. You have to have the fish there and everything. But I think confidence comes before you even show up on a lake. So when I go to some of these lakes, I do little research whatsoever. I don't think it's because I'm lazy. I know it's not that. What it is I've done the info thing years and years ago, and it happened. I'm a quick learner. Mm-hmm. It happened once or twice. I'd have a co-angler or something say, "Hey, let's go down this bank right here." I catch him. I'll never forget. We were on the Red River, and I'm like, "This bank right here." He's like, "Yeah, like throw this little Bandit 200 down it," and I'm like, "This bank right here." Like you catch them on this bank, and so we did. Right, never caught a fish. I did it because we got back through the lock early, right, a little earlier, and I had an hour to kill. So I didn't know anything about the pool I was in. So I'm like, okay, let's kill an hour. Never caught a fish, and it's never worked out for me. I've never gotten anyone's like information like that, and it worked. And so, but once again, I'm a guy who likes to throw different stuff, do different things. So what I learned is I could talk to 100 people about a certain lake, and then I go there and catch them a different way, and every one of them go, "Man, I've never caught them that way." But I realized that they give me the best information in the world. I don't fish like they do, so it wouldn't help me. So my confidence is because, yeah, I can go to this lake and maybe look at it differently, and then go, let's see if anything that I know how to do stuff, if it works on this lake. So I'm kind of always excited to go. Like I can't wait to go to Ross Barnett because I don't know where I'm going to go. I've been there once. I did pretty good. And I know I don't catch them the same way, but I'm like, I can't wait to get up there. I'll probably look at things maybe a little bit different than most.
Mm-hmm.
I might do horrible. I don't know, but I'll have a lot of confidence going there. It's going to be a shallow water deal, right? Probably going to be post spawn shad thing going on. I mean, there's going to be a lot of things that I like to do. So I'll show up there with a ton of confidence. But I might not even know where. Like, you might see me somewhere and go, "Hey, Todd," and I probably might give you the side eye and go, "Yeah, man, you're like, no one's ever caught a fish anywhere where you're at," and I wouldn't even know it. I'm like, I don't know.
No, I feel like I'm evolving a little bit because I'm excited to get there, because the last time I was there, I was like, I have to do A, B, C, and D, and I did it with the same baits as everyone else in the same areas, and I got my butt kicked. Well, this time I'm going back going, man, that might be post-spawn, and there's some stuff down there that I might be able to drop shot and wacky worm.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone's going to be crammed into these areas and focused in on the grass and the stumps and the muddy water, and I might be able to catch them on my spinning rod and survive this deal.
And you might.
And you're doing the same thing, doing what you're doing, with what you. So that's where your confidence is bred in consistent results over time, doing what you're doing. Like you're saying you're gaining, you're developed. Let me see what you said was you're developing basically a foundation of confidence, because your confidence is not only based on results, it's based on the fact that you're getting those results your way.
Right. And so because I thought about that over the break. So like, what would I tell someone? What I would tell them is you've got to go, like, there's no way Matt can do what I do. There's no way that I can do what Matt does. Like, we would do horrible. If I told Matt what to go do, he'd probably do horrible in an event. If Matt told me what to,
I hate a swim jig. Hate a swim jig.
Yeah. You'd be giving me the juice, and I'd probably go screw it up bad. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think the guys that own themselves, right? That's what I'll tell you, is do what you're good at. Mm-hmm. Figure out what you like to do. I learned this in church one day. It was really a cool deal at church. I was really young. It's always stuck with me. the pastor, Dr. Ed Young at Second Baptist, he goes, and I was a little kid, right? So I have this very little mind tract, right? A very narrow tract mind listening to him. And he goes, think about the one or two, three things that you really love. They're the things that you're best at. I'll just never forget him saying that. And I started thinking about that, like, yeah, I like to run. I was a little track runner, and I was like, I love to run. I'm pretty good at it. I like to fish. I'm pretty good at it. Think about that the same way with your fishing. Figure out what you really love to do. Like, I hate throwing an Alabama rig. I don't particularly like throwing a wacky rig, right? I love throwing a frog. Pretty good at it. Love sight fishing. Pretty good at it, right? So think about what you really love to do. Get really good at it. When you go to a lake, surprisingly enough, most of those things that you can figure out a way to make a lot of those things work on some of these lakes. Not to win it, because, like, man, you can't go out there trying to win every event. We're never on the fish to win every event, no matter how good someone thinks they are. Right? You just said it. You can't have confidence when you're not around the fish, right? Like, you might not be around them. So sometimes it's about survival, especially in these open. I'm thinking an open mindset, right? The Bassmaster open mindset.
Yep.
Some of it's so much survival of just trying to catch one more fish just to give your chance the next day to survive again. I mean, so it's a lot easier to catch a fish doing something that you're good at, that you love, that you want to do. You know, be a little open-minded, but I think that's where confidence come from. You know, this is what I like to do. I've seen it work. Let's go make it work. And I think if you see the guys that win, rarely are they doing something that they're not good at. Like, usually it's something that they're like Jason Christie. I mean, spinnerbait and the jig, big surprise, right? Like,
yeah,
what he can do.
It's weird to me. Like, okay, so like human nature, when you're really young, you're like super impressionable, right? Like, you could go back and do all the studies to where, like, what is it? You are who you are by the time you're like 6 or 7 or something, or whatever's impersonating on you based on like your experiences. You don't even realize it. So I like think about that in fishing too, and it's weird. So like, you get into fishing, and typically when you get in, if you're a kid, you don't really have a choice of who you go out with. You're out with a relative, you're out with a guy from your bass club or whatever. So like, is your style, like, you know, I talk to a lot of people who get into, they're listening to BTL, they've been in it for 3 or 4 years. They got into bass fishing. They literally like wanted a hobby. They saw it. They thought it was cool. They might have seen MLF. They might have seen the Elite Series. They might have had a friend who took them one time. But they're like, I get a lot of, you know, you talk about style and you talk about what you're good at and you talk about this, like, how do you know what your style is and how do you know what you're good at? Well, there's a whole group of us who like grew up who like it just kind of happened. Like for me, it just happened. Like I fished with a couple different people, but the weird thing is I grew up like power fishing in Central Illinois, and then I turned into like a finesse freak, and I'm not sure why, but it just evolved for me. I didn't like have a choice to decide what style. I'm sure it was the same for you. Growing up, you got into it, like you had the Lake Livingston there. Did someone take you fishing? Did someone show you how to?
No, that's the crazy part. Well, so you're going to love this, right? So my dad took me fishing, white bass fishing and catfishing off the bank.
Okay.
So I mean, we catfished off the bank, and I crappie fished in the marina. I lived in the marina on Lake Livingston, and then we had a pontoon boat, and we could white bass fish. And I'm saying, like, we were jigging spoons back when everyone was trolling. Like there'd be 100 trollers out there, and we'd be jigging up, you know, spoons out there. So that's what we did. Well, a guy introduced me to it was pouring down rain. Long story short, he introduced me to a worm, auger tail worm. I went out there in the rain off the bank in the marina and caught some bass. So I walked the banks every day forever. And a guy had Mark Malone, who I fished my first tournament with ever. But at the time, he had seen me walking the bank, hands me a speed trap, Fire Tiger speed trap. I go out there and catch him. It was made by Lure Jensen. So that all this time.
I just threw it on Cherokee, like original, old school.
Old school. So I had the speed trap, and I'd go up and down it was at the perfect time where I could catch them it was like in May or something. So I'm going around catching them on the speed trap, and one speed trap, right? And then I catch this like 40-pound op on it, right?
A what?
Opelousas, like big old catfish.
Flathead.
big flathead
Yeah, no, I know. I'm just, you can't, I mean, Opelousas is a foreign word for most people, and then you refer to it as the op. I got you. Flathead. It's like calling a crappie a sakalai.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I catch this thing. Of course, I'm a little kid, man. So, I get this thing. We take pictures of it. It's awesome. So I had this just beat up bait. Well, like I said, you just got to, things have to go your way sometimes as a kid. Well, a man by the name of Ken Seifert lived in Cold Spring, Texas, and he was the Lure Jensen rep. Had an office down there right in the middle of Cold Spring. So I kind of found this out, and I couldn't wait. So I went and showed him this speed trap. Just showed him the Opelousas, the flathead, catfish, the pictures of some bass. Showed him this bait, and he's like, "Oh man, that's awesome. Here's some baits." So he gave me tons of these Lure Jensen baits that I would never have been able to buy or anything, and they're all kinds of baits, like 10 or 15 baits. So I go down there every day with a new bait. You get where my story's going? I go down there with a new bait, and I'm out there fishing this new bait every day. And then I would go tell him what I caught, and then he'd give me some more new baits. And so, like, I would have it didn't matter what bait it was. He was giving me baits, and I'd go out there, walk the bank with all these new baits, and try different things. Now, fast forward 20 years from now, I'm a guy who loves to throw different baits around. I like to throw baits that no one else is throwing. I like to design. Like now I work with Strike King as the, pretty much the head guy on innovation of baits. Right. So, it's amazing. That's where it came from. It came from literally Lure. And then I went with Strike Pro, who gave me 500 new baits that no one in the country had ever seen. And I had to go figure those out. And so it just evolved where my confidence came from throwing baits and doing things different than most. But it literally happened.
Started at that first.
Instantly because no one taught me how to bass fish. I just learned on the banks by myself. Now, eventually I got to go with Mark Malone and some other guys, I learned. But for the most part, and then most of my tournaments were with my dad, who had never bass fished, and then my best friend Eddie, all growing up, who, like I said, we kind of learned at the same time. So a lot of my learning was just trial and error stuff. But but those it was pretty cool to have that. Like, right.
You didn't even know you were developing your style at the time. It was just how you got in. And then instead of having someone saying, "Hey, here's how you're supposed to do it," you're fishing with your dad, who's supportive, who's there with you, but didn't bass fish. So there was no one saying, "No, that's wrong, that's right." It was just, go do your thing, Todd. You developed it on your own. That's why you've got an unorthodox style.
Correct.
That's smart. That's brilliant.
But I didn't know it. Right. You didn't know it at the time. So I had no one saying, "Hey, this." I remember when I first learned to sight fish, I was just a little kid, and I remember going, "Do you talk about not knowing anything?" I was like, "Look at this stupid fish. It won't leave." I had no idea it was on a bed. It just wouldn't leave. And I just kept throwing at it, and I caught it. And I think that's why I became a pretty good sight fisherman, because I'd walk around going, "Look at these I don't know, never even realized it was a springtime. I'm just a kid going, look, I was just loving the fact that, like, look at this dumb fish. It won't leave. I get to keep throwing at it, and all of a sudden it bites. And I'm like, oh, okay. It's just crazy.
That's good stuff. I've never even thought about it, but now I'm thinking, so like when I first started fishing Assumption Bass Club, this guy named Darren took me under his wing. We're in Central Illinois. It's really hard to catch keepers. Threw a black and blue jig, a little bitty crankbait, and he liked to go into the marinas and throw a shaky head, which was a jig head worm down in East Texas, as Harold Allen will remind you. We've been throwing shaky heads for 60 years. It was just called a pork pin on an 1/8 ounce, blah, 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 with a true turn. But, to me, as a co-angler at 14 years old, I wanted to take something to the Assumption Bass Club way in, and if I could do it with a shaky head and Darren would go into a marina and catch a fish, like, I'm sure that, like, stuck with me to where I was like, okay, finesse presentations and what's with the marinas, and then I came up with the Bridges Marina riprap and ramps, high production areas that at big boat tournaments always hold it year round, baits that get bites to catch limits, and boom, I had already started developing the style and didn't even intentionally do it.
Right.
I guess everyone has.
Rayburn was my deal. So many, I got to Rayburn. I'll never forget this on Rayburn. When I got to Rayburn, grass flipping was I didn't realize it, but grass flipping was here, but it was kind of going down. Like they didn't have, and this is for me when I got there, so I don't want people to go, oh.
What year was this? Roundabout.
Early 2000s. So
Okay.
I'd heard that like late 90s that there was like tons of grass.
Before YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
Before all this stuff to where everyone can know it instantly.
Right. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. There was still a grass flipping deal going on. It just wasn't like it was. I mean, there used to be grass out there, main lake, just super deep. And everyone that back then, that's what people did to win tournaments. Faircloth would tell you all about it. Right. But when I got there, there was these tournaments and I sat there and I went out there to go flip. I didn't really like everyone for years. They don't say it anymore. But when I had some success on Rayburn, everyone from around the country would go, oh man, you must really like to flip grass. And I'm like, hate it. And they're like, what? And I'm like, don't like it. Don't do it. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, I've never even come close to winning a tournament flipping grass. I could probably tell you the number of fish I've ever weighed in flipping grass. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, I got down there, flipped grass. It was hard. It was inconsistent for me. I didn't understand it really well. I fished some tournaments, got absolutely just beat down. And I looked around going, there's Dickie Newberry. Dickie, if y'all don't know who Dickie Newberry is, look him up.
He's
Dude's
the goat of Rayburn and East Texas.
Great. And I looked at him going, how am I supposed to beat that guy that has 20 years of experience over me, a guy who's fished here a year, and I'm supposed to go try to compete in a grass flipping deal against him? Man, like I said, I learned quick. And I'm like, not going to try it. So over the next couple months or whatever, like that year, I tried to figure out another way to catch fish without flipping. So I never flipped. And sure enough, I figured out there was this one tournament, me and my buddy, we blew it out. And everyone's flipping around us. And we're fishing around that grass, just crushing big ones. And it was right. I mean, it was right in June, right where everyone's flipping. And we should have blown it out even worse. And I go, yeah, man, it opened my eyes up. And it's not about that one tournament. It was about, hey man, just because this was the way, it was the same thing with the rattle trap deal, right? I was like, just because everyone's doing it for 20 years doesn't mean it was the best way to catch them, right? Mm-hmm. And so I've just always looked at it going, okay, this is what everyone's doing. Maybe keep an open mind. Let's try to figure out another way to catch them. There has to be, because, and you can see, look at all these different ways we're catching them now as opposed to 20 years ago. Well, guess what? Some kid's going to be 20 years from now catching them in a way that me and you had no concept of catching. Mm-hmm. So I'm always like, I think that's what happens with older fishermen too. They get caught up in our ways. And I've always tried to remind myself, like, don't get caught up in what I did 10 years ago. It's hard, man. It's hard as you get older, but try to keep that open mind and like rethink what we even know about fishing, like progress with it. But yeah, man, it's a weird, I always try to look for a different way out.
You ever seen something on YouTube or online that looks interesting and then went and tried it? Because that's a whole different ball game. And like I said, we could do a whole show on conference. We could do a whole show on how social media and the YouTube has changed bass fishing. But
how many? You want to know how many YouTube videos I've watched in my life? There's only one. I've only watched, other than Andrew or Holman's, at times when they've asked me to watch it. The only YouTube video I've watched all the way through, I probably clicked on maybe 15 in my lifetime. Probably never got more than 2 minutes through any of them. The only one is this is not too long ago, so I'm gonna show myself. Dude, hey, look, I didn't know much about spinning rods. Okay, so you're gonna love this. So you can rag on me anytime you want to, because I have zero problem with anybody making fun of me. So I'm gonna show myself. I'm like, dude, I never even caught a fish on a spinning rod up until like 4 or 5 years ago. Other than, crappie, yes, and all that stuff, and caught bass accidentally, but not purposely. And but I'm like, I need to figure out the spinning rod thing, especially on tour. When I went on tour, and I throw it a lot now. Don't get me wrong, but man, I had to YouTube was Brent Ayler's How to Tie a braid to fluorocarbon knot, and I
Pretty
watched
good guy
that.
to listen to if you're going to listen to anyone about spinning rods.
So I listened and I paid attention and I watched it probably 20 times through. I mean, I would like stop it, pause it, and that's pretty much the only YouTube video that I really clicked on to watch, because I don't know, like I said, I mean, that was it. That was not too long ago. I'm telling you right now, that was less than 5 years ago. I had to learn how to tie that knot. Maybe 5 years ago. But
that's acceptable. Like, I don't know all the stuff you're getting at. Like I said, I don't know. I'm the same way you are with a spinning rod with Is-It. Here's the only problem. What I chose to get quote unquote good at is like really good at being first out of the money. What you chose to get really, really good at wins tournaments.
I know. Yeah. And it's so, hey, this is what I wanted to say. We could go into everything forever. You're asking me about tournaments. I want to bring this back up because you said first out of the money, because I want to bring up what you're doing, not in a bad way.
Mm-hmm.
You asked me about tournaments. Well, you know, one of the things that I don't like about tournaments right now, or like, you asked me like, what would be your tournament? I was kind of thinking more or less you might ask me if you could like run the biggest tournament in the world, right? Like have a professional, how would I organize it and stuff?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things I think of, but what I will say is this: I'm not a big fan of how tournament organizations have your qualifications set up to get here. Not so much like they can make a lot of different rules. What I don't like is this: in those opens, they put guys that they go to certain places with 200. How many boats are at the last one? 230 for y'all?
230.
230. How many guys will fish the elites in a
This
tournament?
year, there's 94.
94. It's not the same. We all know it's not the same. It is a world of difference. They've come close to trying to, but like, how many days of practice y'all get for the opens?
As many as you want.
How many days you get for the elites, right? We all know it. Like
2.5.
So, in my opinion, I'm not saying you're setting people up for failure. That's not what I'm saying, because I think you're setting some people up. Now, granted, Christie and Hackney, they both went requalified, and you got guys.
That's 0.001 percenters.
I agree. I totally agree with you. And so what happens is, and I saw it one time when the opens went to like Two Rivers in this other horrible place. And all these guys, one was a backyard of Red River. The other one was the Muskogee and something else. And you had all these guys fishing out of these little bitty aluminum boats, doing all these things. And just hear me out on this. I don't have whatever. You can do what you want to do. But what happens is guys were getting in places with zero pressure, hideaway little spots, whatever. And then you look at them, they make the elites, and they're on, wherever they're on Hartwell, right? And they're going,
preach. I've said this for years.
And
it doesn't make any sense.
They don't know how to go catch a fish because, like, I don't know where to go take my one. They can't have their little aluminum boat. Like, when I say aluminum boat, not aluminum boat as a 20-foot Jason Christie Express boat. I'm talking about a 14-footer with a 90 horsepower that, and it just made. I was going, this isn't realistic for them because
Todd, I don't even care what boat they're in either. The opens for 3 tournaments, 6 days isn't realistic.
No. And
you have to finish in the top 20 in every single one. Well, how do you finish in the top 20 in 250 boat tournaments? You take risks. So I hate the term. The worst term in the world is swinging for it.
Oh, I hate it too. Thank you.
I despise it. But there's only one way. There's only one way to make it in 230 boat tournaments, and that's to swing for it. And you hit it 3 times. And that's your style of fishing. You're a power fisherman with one thing. This is what you go in to do. You swing for it, you hit it, but it does not. You have to take crazy risks to have 3 tournaments in a row that are that good, but you don't know how to. You don't. You get the top 1%ers are fine with it, but then you end up with the guys who have always swung and just swing, and they don't have the skill set to survive when they've got a guy throwing 105-mile-an-hour gas. So they make it on the 3 because you've got all these talented anglers who are finishing in the top 20% over and over again. Well, you got to do an outlier to finish in the top 2% to be the 3 guys that are making it. But then when you go to all these fisheries you haven't across all these different conditions, you don't have the skill set to survive because you only know how to do the one thing. And bass throws you in it after 6 days and 3 tournaments spread out over 10 months.
It's a lot. And everything you just said was right. And there's more. Like I said, I mean, even like for me, I think power fishing is the worst on these opens because there's 230 guys out there that have, in half of them, you know this as well as I do, I don't go that much for practice. I'm just not I'm not a guy who I love to practice. I'll stay out there 10 days, 12 hours a day. Like that doesn't bother me. I love it. The problem is I've learned that it hurts me, right? It doesn't do well for me. And so all my good tournaments I do is usually I do good on like halfway through day 1 and then figure it out better on day 2, even though I just spent all this time practicing, right? But you got guys out there that practice for 2 weeks at these places. And then, like you said, they go to these elite events and they get 2.5 days. They can't figure it out. And we're not saying all of them. I want it because there'll be guys comment on here. They'll be like, oh yeah, well, what about this guy? There's outliers in this. What we're saying is that, yeah, all I'm saying is I would much rather see a different size field with a different, there's no co-anglers. I'm not knocking the co-anglers. I'm just saying the qualifications, and I will say the opens have done a better job of, hey, we're not going to allow you to throw an Alabama rig because you can't throw one in the elites.
And
hey,
no nets.
No nets. So they've done a fairly good job, but I would love if I could change one rule, wouldn't you love a 3-day practice?
Yeah, we fish more in the opens than you do on the Elite Series, and then you always feel like at least I always feel anxious because I'll be recording BTLs on a Thursday and open up Instagram and there it is. I promise you, you'll have James River, Ross Barnett, blah, 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 headed there, and it's like 6 days. So then you feel like, do I get there on a Friday? Well, I don't have to work Saturday. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, part of Wednesday? Well, gas is $4 a gallon. Well, I'll get there Sunday. Well, now I'm slacking because I could have gotten there Friday and Saturday. Like, just, yeah.
And then some guys over there going, he wants it more than you. And you're like, well, it's not that. It's just.
It's on the fishery, too. Like a fishery in the spring. So, like, in my opinion, Ross Barnett is going to be changing a lot. They've got a big college tournament there. It's going to be a transitional time of the year. It's a 20-plus thousand acre lake, and the fish are going to really feel the boating and fishing pressure. I don't care how good it was on Saturday and Sunday. I don't care how good it was on Monday. I kind of care if I can still get a bite somewhere on Tuesday and maybe Wednesday morning. Because I'm wanting to see where these fish are moved to. Because from my experience, and like I said, I'm not like an opens guru. I do above average. I finish in the top 30%, 35% in every tournament. I don't top 10 them. I'm always one bite away from really having a good derby. It's frustrating as hell. But that's where I am right now because I'm doing it. I mean, I'll get better at it, hopefully. If I don't get better at it, then I'll stop.
It's different.
Right. But it's
different.
Amazing how much the pressure moves the fish. My deal is I would rather have an average spot that stays average for the tournament than a great spot 2 days before the tournament. Because my average spot, fewer people are going to find it. It's going to stay average. That average spot is going to become a good spot. And the great spot, people are going to find it. You're going to catch fish in it. There's going to be boat pressure in it. It's going to become an average spot. So there's spots that are, I'm looking for spots that are like this, whereas the winning spot's going to be up here. But what I end up finding is my trajectory of my spot is level, and that trajectory is down. So when the tournament meets that level spot, all of a sudden is way higher on the graph than the spot that was really good in the tournament before the tournament started. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah. So I did a whole video over this of like why pros win tournaments on your lake when you can't. And it was about kind of talking about certain places. I learned this at Lake of the Ozarks. in a Toyota event is because it happens on Rayburn all the time too. I'll talk to some guy on Rayburn. Should it happen at this last MLF event, the tour event or something? Me and Jim Tut, I think Jim Tut was telling me about it, or someone, I think it was Tut. He knew the guy where he was catching him on that drain. There was a drain that some guy was cranking him on, right? And he told him where it was. And Jim Tut started laughing. He's like, yeah, don't worry about it. You'll have it all to yourself. He's like, what do you mean? He goes, well, you just found like the worst creek on the lake, right? It wasn't a great – he made a top 10 doing it because it was a horrible creek. But since everything else had been so pressured, it became good. Lake of the Ozarks was the same way. I get there and I stopped fishing. Like there's certain places that I would go there and practice and smash on them. And then tournament comes around and I wouldn't do good. And so one of those tournaments I start just, you know how it is. I don't know if you've ever been like that. You're so frustrated. You just look over there and go, I'm tired of running my spots. I'm just going to fish down that bank of boat docks. And I just went down it and had a couple more bites. And someone was like, did you catch anything over there? I'm like, yeah. He goes, no one really fishes right here. Like you pretty much did as good as you possibly could do.
But it was a good spot because no one fished there.
But my 4 fish I caught down that bank was better than my 2 fish I've caught in the last 6 hours because everyone's been fishing that same stuff. And so I talk about that, right? And that's the same thing like what you're saying is Texoma, same thing. I knew how to go. It's the best practice lake in the world. Everywhere where I go, I don't even go practice those places anymore because I know what it looks like come tournament day. Now, these open tournaments that we fish, sometimes we don't know. We have to keep an eye on those places. Like we don't really know if what we found is good or bad, right? So sometimes we look up and go, man, I haven't really seen anyone around me. And next thing you know, show up tournament day and they're all around you. But I'm with you. You don't have to just crush them. You just have to survive.
I don't have it figured out. I fished 20 of these things. I've made the day 3 cut one time, but I'm consistently in the top 35%. So I'm obviously doing something wrong because that doesn't get the job done. I'm not cashing checks. I'm staying in the hunt. I'm finishing in the top 20 in the points every time, but I'm not accomplishing my goal. I'm not having a realistic chance of qualifying. I'm not surviving out there. And I understand you don't fish the opens if your goal is to cash a $3,000 check, but I feel like there's got to be some sort of piece of that puzzle that I'm missing.
I don't. So I did pretty good in the opens a couple years ago and did fairly good, and then quit fishing for a while. And I really quit fishing when they went to the rivers.
Mm-hmm. You're fishing them the centrals this year.
Yes, but I didn't like the river deal. They went for like a couple years to rivers, and I saw what they became. They were just a nightmare of.
And you signed up for the Red River in like September this year. That's bold.
Yeah, but I also I trashed on it for like 4 hours that I can't trash on it anymore. Like they'll ban me if I trash on it anymore.
You just signed up for Rayburn in the fall. Anyway, continue.
No, in Ross Park. No, I signed up just because it fit my schedule. I do the opens are you never know, whatever. Okay. But no, the Red River, I've trashed that place 1,000 times. But what I'll say about that is I did pretty good in the last opens. So I fished 2 of them last year and got a check in both of them. And I think my last couple ones the year before that, I think I cashed some checks. So or like the last couple. Like I'm like with you, it took me a while to really understand. I don't really even know what I'm saying. Like it took me a while to figure some of it out, but I'm with you. It's the one thing that I still can't put my finger on because I can go fish Toyotas. Like I just finished 4th at Texoma, and yeah, I know Texoma. Dude, there was a 360 boat field high school event and 176 guys of art on a lake in Texoma where everyone was hitting the bank. I still figured out how to catch 18 pounds out there. And I just kind of did it behind everyone. I was in the last boat too. I was like 160 something. So I didn't even get to start. I mean, you know, it was one of those deals that I understood that lake and how to go behind people and do some things. But I've been able to do it in Toyotas easier.
Do you think they don't practice as long, or there's more
I can't
locals in it, or what is it?
No, and I think there's more locals in the Toyotas than there are in the Opens. And then someone's going to go on here and be like, well, Rayburn, well, hold on, man. I'm going to put Grand in there. I was going to Table Rock.
Yeah, there's way more locals in the Toyotas.
Yeah, I'm not.
Do you think they fish it less so they don't beat the crap out of it beforehand? So you've got a lot of guys who kind of know what they're going to do. They don't spend 2 weeks there. They do 3 days. They shake off a lot of fish, and they go into it to where the fishery still kind of resembles something normal?
I do, and I'm not going to sit there and say. I would say there's probably here's how I looked at the tour as well. I remember Wesley Strader saying this about when he went from the tour to the elites. He goes, man, he goes, when I left, and in like one of the first tournaments, when you fished the tour, when you left an area you were at and drove somewhere else, it was a 75-80% chance when you got there, someone else was there. He's like, man, I was driving around, like his first year on the elites. He's like, man, I was driving around going, am I on the same lake? Like, where is everyone? Mm-hmm. And so he got to go fish, power fish the way he wanted to. He didn't care about leaving a spot because he's like, man, I can just go over there and chances are no one's going to be there. You cannot do that in the Opens, right? You cannot.
You got to go right to the meat, and you have to absolutely obliterate the meat when you get there.
Right. And so, it's just a weird deal. I wouldn't say the fishermen are better, but it was kind of like the tour. I wouldn't say they were better fishermen on the tour. It's not what I would say because there's no one out there winning every event. So obviously when you show up to an event, there's about a 25% chance there's a chance that 25% of those anglers in that event can win that event. So we're talking 30, 40 guys probably could win that event or on something to win that event. When you go from 90 guys on the elites to the tour at the time with 176, the elites probably still had better fishermen, but there were still more guys on tour, right? So you still had there was more guys that had a chance to win an event. Mm-hmm. Same thing with the Opens. I'm not saying there's better fishermen fishing the Opens, but there is in the sense of if you got 170 compared to 230, chances are maybe there's 10 more guys that can do good. And that means something. And so I don't know what it is, man. I'm with you. I still haven't been able to put my finger on it, but
some guys have. Like Brendan Lester finishes in the top 10 half of the Opens. Half of them. He's fished like 30 of them. He has like 15 top 10s. I mean, there's a formula there. I mean, he's a dang good angler, but I mean, he's not like a KVD mid-2000s angler.
Well, so it's always weird how a guy can be better in the Opens than on the elites. And I'm not saying he's not good in the elites. What I'm saying is his record shows that he is really, obviously, really phenomenal in the Opens. Like
he obviously knows how to break down water with a lot of people on it.
Yeah, I think there's some talent to that for sure.
Absolutely,
I mean, for sure.
Kurt Dove's qualified for the elites like 3 times. I think Charlie Hartley's done it too. There's certain guys who just understand how to do that system.
Well, so here's the other thing, and I've kind of said this too. Once again, scheduling. When are most like so many of the Opens are more? Half of them are in the fall, but once again, half the tournaments in the elites are in the spring.
Yeah, I know that makes no sense. Fall tournaments.
Again, and you think there's not a difference? Man, I'm telling you, there's a lot. We all consider ourselves probably, I'm a better springtime fisherman than a fall fisherman.
Oh, no, I'm 150% better in the fall.
Are you?
Hate the spring and pre-spawn and post-spawn early stuff. Put me in the frickin' fall and give me a 12-pound to 15-pound a day on 6 different lures. Love it. Love it. You know why? Because I never fished in the spring or anything for 15 years because I was covering the Bassmaster Elite Series and the FLW Tour. So I wrote about it. I read about it. I watched it. I was on the lakes, but I wasn't fishing it. You know when I got to fish? When the season was over.
Right.
So I was on the water every day during the fall for 12 years.
So the springtime, obviously, there was a sight fishing deal and some other things, but that's where most of the like to this day, most of our like January through May, for years, people don't realize this. I fished a tournament from January to the 1st of June for about 10 years. I never had a weekend off, maybe one. Usually it was like Memorial Day or something. Like I fished like literally If it was 22 weeks in a row, I fished 22 weekends in a row a tournament. Now the fall, what I did, I'm not saying I can't catch them in the fall. I got pretty good in the fall because of one thing: championships. All the championships were in the fall, so I learned to get good in the fall. But once again, I am more of a home run hitter in the fall because a championship means something, and it was usually a pretty big prize, right? And it was usually a 1 or 2 day, like you had to go like crush them.
Yeah, third place was like, thanks for coming out. First and second had like a lot of zeros.
And I didn't really care about doing that. And, it was just, I just learned, I tried to figure out how to catch them really big in the fall. So I'm not that guy. Like I know you are. You will never see me with a little crankbait throwing around trying to catch, which will do you good. 2.5 pounders all day long in the fall in some of these lakes will freaking make top 10s. But dude, I don't own a crankbait as small as some of the ones y'all throw. And I will never go through. I'll do the opposite. I'll look at all y'all and go, what's the biggest crankbait I can go throw now?
You know what's great? That's great. That's why we live in America. You can have 230 guys that show up to a tournament all at different times, all with a game plan, all thinking that theirs is the best game plan to win, and go on a lake and start in 230 different spots, and all have a reason why they started there with 230 different baits, and everyone's different setup. And, at the end of 3 days, it's always within ounces or a pound or two of each other in the most cases. But that's the beauty of it. That's why your channel works. That's why Hallman's channel, Upshaw's channel. That's why people listen to BTL. It's a beautiful sport. There's a lot of ways to get to the main objective. And it's interesting because I can interview someone who says, you got to practice more. I can interview someone who says you got to practice less. I can interview someone who says you got to work out more. I can interview someone who says you got to work out less. I can interview someone who says it's all mental, and I can interview someone who says it's all about time on the water. It's crazy.
It is.
It's crazy, and you have to find the guys who have succeeded. And you listen to what you say and interview the guys, are the guys who have taken little things and they've made it their own. That's the one, seems like the general theme of anglers that I have interviewed who have been successful over time. They've made it their own. They have not emulated anyone else. They have not tried to copy anyone else. And they don't care what other people do. They don't care if they're doing the right thing. They make it their own. And it seems simple to a lot of those other guys. I mean, go through the list of guys that you really respect right now that you think are killing it in the game or that have. They've made it their own and they do it their own way. And a lot of times it's really simple.
That's the part that bothers me the most is when I find out what someone did and I'm just going, it is. It's usually the most, like, watch Carl Jacobson throw a glide bait, right? And I have my reasons why I really don't throw a glide bait, and a lot of it is what happened.
Another show.
Yeah. But, it's crazy. But then you got a guy over there, I'm just going to go, do this. Just do some simple fishing. I don't want to call it Jason Christie does is simple. That's not what I'm saying. But it's not like he broke out this new technique. He just beat everyone he just outfished everyone.
Yeah.
Guy's got talent, right? Like unbelievable talent. And there's a lot more that goes into it. I don't think people realize. Like I think he's looking at stuff. He's definitely playing some chess with what he sees out there on the water while everyone else is playing checkers, no doubt. So he can go real simple on them and still beat everyone.
100% agree. Todd, we've been going at this for almost 2 hours. Actually, 1 hour, 59 minutes and 17 seconds to be exact. And I think if we end this right at the 2 hour mark, that's like a reasonable time to say, hey, we need to.
Well, you dog
because I mean, you got like a family. I got stuff. It's like we could go for 5-6 hours on this, man.
But you did dog me for like the first 15, 20 minutes.
No, I just was trying to get answers for things that have affected me. But I got answers. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing you down at
I'll meet back up.
At Ross Burnett meet up. Have a cold one. Do you drink beer? You'll drink a cold beer? I know Hallman does. Like if you want to have a peace offering with Hallman, have an ice cold Coors Light waiting on him when you get off the water. You're his best friend. You could start in his starting hole, but if you've got an ice cold Coors Light at the end of the day, you're golden.
You better be a real good friend if you want to drink whiskey with him.
Yeah, I've never done that. Never will.
Oh, I do, but that's when it's just me and him hanging out. Like those are good times.
I hear you, Todd. I greatly appreciate it. YouTube channel, Todd Castledine Fishing. Follow you on all the social medias. You always have a lot of awesome stuff out there, and it's been long overdue for you to be on BTL. I would like to get you on again before the end of the year, and we have to get into the team tournament stuff still.
Yeah, it's fine. I had a blast, man. I appreciate you having me on.
Thanks for having it. All right, this has been Bass Talk Live. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.